James Watt, co-founder of Brewdog, has been accused of abuse of power in the workplace by former employees. More than 15 ex-Brewdog workers have come forward to speak out about CEO James Watt in the BBC's disclosure program. Former Brewdog USA employees said Mr. Watt's behavior made female bartenders feel uncomfortable and powerless. Lawyers for Mr. Watt said the allegations were not true and he denies behaving inappropriately. Brewdog was founded in 2007 by Mr. Watt, then just 24, and his friend Martin Dickey, and it has its headquarters in Elon in the northeast of Scotland. The company, which has more than 100 bars and employs more than 2,000 people worldwide, says it is worth about £2 billion. In 2016, Brewdog opened its first U.S. bar in Columbus, Ohio, and now has 8 across 3 states. According to the BBC, Scotland disclosure team started investigating the company after almost 300 former and current Brewdog employees signed a letter last year accusing Mr. Watt of presiding over a toxic culture of fear. The documentary The Truth About Brewdog features interviews with 12 former Brewdog USA staff who have alleged inappropriate behavior and abuse of power in the workplace by Mr. Watt. The documentary will show claims that Mr. Watt was seen by employees kissing an intoxicated customer on a roof terrace bar. Female bartenders were instructed on how to avoid unwelcome attention from Mr. Watt. Managers would try to reschedule certain female staff whenever Mr. Watt visited. One bartender said she felt powerless to prevent unwelcome attention from Mr. Watt. Mr. Watt, while on trips to his U.S. bars, took women on late-night private brewery tours, leaving staff feeling uncomfortable. Mr. Watt flirted with a staff member before taking her to the roof of a Brewdog building in view of other staff. Former employee Caitlin Ising, who worked in Dog Tap, Brewdog's flagship bar and brewery in Canal, Winchester, Ohio, said female staff would dress down when they knew Mr. Watt would be in their bars. Caitlin Ising advised female staff not to wear makeup or wear hair down when Mr. Watt was in town. She says, "We would make a point to warn new girls, like, hey, just so you know, James Watt's coming to town. Just, kind of, leave after your shift, don't really hang around, and, don't always do your hair and makeup that day, like don't catch his attention." Caitlin says she saw Mr. Watt take female customers on late-night tours of the U.S. brewery, next to the Dog Tap. Sometimes there would be one woman, sometimes there would be a gaggle of women, she said. They were always intoxicated, they were in their 20s usually. They were very pretty, and he would say he's taking them on a private tour of the brewery. Former employee Jackie English said she saw Mr. Watt doing similar things. She said, there were 3 separate nights. He'd come into the building with a girl, a young female, cute little blondes, and he would take them into the brewery to give them a tour or whatever. Jackie said this behavior made her feel uncomfortable. She says, "You're showing your employees that you can do whatever you want because of who you are and who your name is." That's how it felt a lot of times. Mr. Watt's lawyer told the BBC this allegation was false. Mr. Watt regularly takes both women and men, friends and customers on evening tours of the brewery, the lawyer said. It is not true to say that those who accompany him are intoxicated. The claim that he did was made by an employee in June 2021. It was fully investigated, the claims were not substantiated, no further action was warranted by Brewdog USA HR. Former employee Dylan Gray was a manager at Brewdog Franklinton, in Columbus, Ohio. He told the program, "I would schedule certain female staff around him so they would not be there. I would schedule more men at nights when he was there. I would sit behind the bar with female staff so they wouldn't feel uncomfortable." One former employee, who asked not to be named, told the program that Mr. Watt was a starer. "He liked to stare," she said. "I just wanted to leave, and not really deal with it." She said she would ask to have her shifts changed in order to avoid him. What do you do when that's your boss, the head of the company? You can't really tell them no, or cut them off, you feel a little bit powerless, she said. Dylan Gray said the female bartender discussed her concerns with him. He said, "It didn't make me feel good, to have someone who is your captain to make you feel that way. That shouldn't be how it is. It was disappointing, and I'm more or less disappointed in myself that I couldn't make something happen sooner." Dylan claimed he would have been canned long ago if he confronted Mr. Watt. Mr. Watt's lawyer told the BBC, "This is categorically denied. At no time has Mr. Watt given unwelcome attention to any female bartender. That account is not true. This was fully investigated by Centric HC, who concluded that there was no substance to these claims." The lawyer said regarding the following inquiries by Brewdog, none of the managers interviewed had any knowledge of staff attempting to change shifts to avoid Mr. Watt. Former employee Meg Herman told the BBC Mr. Watt had been flirtatious with an employee one evening at their Canal Winchester HQ. She said, "He ends up going up to the roof with her, and no one on staff, that was downstairs, felt comfortable with it. He could have gone anywhere else, but he didn't. He did it at the brewery. And that is a power trip." Mr. Watt's lawyer told the BBC that their client has never been on the roof of the Dog Tap, either on his own or accompanied by anyone. Duty manager Nathan Quick worked in Brewdog's Franklinton bar until last year. He is one of two former employees who say they witnessed Mr. Watt having a sexual encounter on the roof terrace bar. "He was on the rooftop kissing with his hand up the shirt of this young lady," he said. "It wasn't uncommon for us to have the perception that that was going on, but for us to physically see it was something else." Mr. Watt's lawyer said, "At no time did Mr. Watt have a sexual encounter on the roof terrace of the Franklinton bar. We hold a statement from the only party that Mr. Watt could have been present with at the Franklinton bar. She has confirmed in her statement that Mr. Watt and her did visit the roof briefly, but absolutely no sexual encounter took place. She has also confirmed that far from being intoxicated, she drove herself home that evening." Mr. Watt's lawyer said that they hold a statement from the manager of Brewdog Franklinton, that it has never been reported to him, nor does he have any knowledge of Mr. Watt ever having any kind of sexual encounter with someone on the rooftop bar. The BBC investigation spoke to almost 100 former and current Brewdog staff. Most of those who still work at the company said they were afraid to speak publicly for fear of losing their jobs. One current employee was willing to speak publicly. Kayla McGuire works in the brewery in Ohio. "I don't think that leaders should be able to intimidate their staff," she said. "I don't think anyone should have to go to work and be afraid of what's going to happen to them, especially not in an industry that should be joyful and fun and creative." She said Mr. Watt's behavior around women was a point of discussion among staff at Brewdog USA. "Those allegations have made many of us uncomfortable. Myself included," she said. James Watt declined to be interviewed for the BBC disclosure program. Brewdog chairman Alan Leighton said he had been given assurances from Mr. Watt that the BBC's claims were not accurate, and were based on misinformation. Mr. Leighton said, "James has committed to making improvements to his management style." He also noted, since publication of the open letter in 2021, the board has overseen a major independent review into our culture, and we have implemented a wide-ranging action plan to address the issues raised. What are your thoughts on this? Don't forget to subscribe. And I will see you in the next video.